A few months ago, Amazon pulled my buyer account. Not my author account, my buyer account. Something flagged in their system. I still don't know exactly what it was, and overnight I was locked out. Couldn't buy anything on Amazon. That bit I could live with, but here's what most people don't realise. Your KDP account is linked to your buyer account, so when the buyer account gets locked, my access to KDP went with it. I couldn't log in. I couldn't see my dashboard. I couldn't adjust pricing, update my books, run promotions, or do anything with the titles that were generating my income. My books were still live. They were still selling. They were still earning. But I couldn't touch them. It took 6 weeks to sort out. 6 weeks of emails, of escalations, of being passed between departments, having no idea whether I could get access back or what would happen to my books if I didn't. And during those 6 weeks, I had a lot of time to think about how much of my business sat behind a single login, about what would happen if this didn't get resolved, about the fact that I'd put all my digital eggs in one basket, and that basket had just been taken away from me. That experience is a big part of why I'm so passionate about the rented land message. That runs through this entire podcast. When I tell you not to build your whole business on somebody else's platform, I'm not repeating something I've read in a blog post. It's something I've lived it. I've spent 6 weeks staring at a locked door with my entire ebook catalogue on the other side. So here's the part you're expecting, the bit where I tell you I pulled everything out of KU and went wide and never looked back. I didn't. My ebooks are still in Kindle Unlimited, and today I'm going to explain why, and why that doesn't contradict a single thing I've said in the first 7 episodes of this podcast. Hi, I'm Steve Kelly. This is Truth Bombs, episode 8. So let's talk about the tribal war. So go into any indie author group online and bring up KU versus Wide, then sit back and watch. Within 10 minutes, you have two camps screaming at each other like they're arguing about religion. KU authors will tell you Wide is a waste of time, that Amazon is where the readers are, that page reads pay the bills, that Wide authors will then tell you KU is a trap, that you're giving Amazon all the power, and that you're one policy change away from losing everything. And they're both right, and they're both wrong, because they're both arguing from their own experience as if it applies to everyone. This is the thing that drives me mad about this particular topic. Authors treat the KU versus Wide discussion like it's an identity, like picking a distribution strategy is the same as supporting a football team. You pick your side, you defend it every thread, and you dismiss anyone who made the other choice as naive or foolish. It's not an identity, it's a business decision, and business decisions should be based on where you are right now, not on what worked for somebody else, or what a guru told you at a conference 3 years ago. So why am I in KU? Let me tell you my actual thinking, because I think that honesty is more useful than theory. I'm a relatively new author building an audience, so my books are near-future crime and hard sci-fi. I don't have a massive backlist yet. I don't have tens of thousands of email subscribers. I'm still building the business. So when you're in that position, KU removes a risk for the reader. They can try you for free as part of the subscription they're already paying for. The barrier to taking a chance on an unknown author drops to 0. That matters when nobody knows who you are. Asking someone to pay $4.99 for a book by an author they've never heard of is a real ask. Letting them read it on KU is a much smaller one. And if you're writing series, which you should be if you've listened to episode 1, KU page reads compound across books. A reader who borrows book 1 doesn't just generate page reads on that title. They borrow book 2, then 3, then 4, and they've never had to make a separate buying decision for any of that. The friction between books is even lower than with purchased ebooks, because they're already in the subscription. They just tap and start reading. The income is real too. It's not the per book royalty you get from a sale, but for genre fiction with good read-through, it adds up. And the KDP Select gives you the access to promotional tools like Kindle countdown deals and free book promotions. You lose all that if you go wide. For a newer author trying to get traction on Amazon, those actually matter. So yes, my ebooks are in KU, and it's a deliberate choice, not a default. Yes, I know it's rented land, But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the 6 weeks locked out of KDP didn't scare me. It did, because it proved everything I've been saying about rented land in the most personable way possible. If Amazon had decided not to reinstate my account, or if it had taken 6 months instead of 6 weeks, I would have no recourse. No alternative platform with my ebooks already live. No wide distribution to fall back on. My entire digital catalogue was behind one door and somebody else held the key. And my situation wasn't even unusual. Search any indie author forum and you'll find stories of authors locked out of their accounts for weeks or months over flagged reviews, disputed royalty payments, or system errors nobody can explain. Most of them get resolved eventually. Some don't. And while you're waiting, your books are either sitting there untouched or, in the worst case, taken down entirely. You can't run promotions. You can't update your pricing for a launch. You can't fix a typo. You're frozen. That's the risk of KU, and it's real regardless of whether it happens to you or not. Amazon can change the page read rate. They've done that before, and then their KENP rate has fluctuated over the years in ways that significantly affect the author income. They can change the terms of KDP Select. They've done that too. They can introduce new policies around AI-generated content that affects how your books are classified or displayed. They can make policy changes that reshape the entire KU economy overnight, and your only option as an author is to accept it or leave. If you're in KU and you've never thought about what happens if the access disappears tomorrow, you need to think about it. Not because it's likely to happen, because the consequences, if it does, are severe enough to warrant a backup plan. So the actual decision framework. So here's how I think about this. And it's not a binary choice. Each channel does a different job. KU is discovery, wide is resilience, direct is ownership. Jeff Bezos built the biggest shop in the world with massive reach and massive discoverability. And it would be daft not to take advantage of that while it's available to you. But while your ebooks are in KDP Select, they can't be on Kobo, Apple Books, Google Play, or anywhere else. You're trading reach on other platforms for visibility on Amazon. Wide gives you presence across multi-platforms, so no single company can shut you down. But the discovery tools aren't as powerful, and building momentum takes longer. Direct selling, which we covered in episode 5, gives you the best margins, and you own the customer data. But you have to drive every visitor there yourself. The mistake most authors make is thinking they have to choose one and commit to it forever. You don't. You can use different strategies for different products at different stages of your career. So what is it I'm actually doing? Here's my current setup, laid out in full because I think that transparency is more useful than just advice. My ebooks are in KU for the reasons I just described. The data supports it at this stage of my career. A meaningful percentage of my reads come from KU borrowers, and those readers are finding me through the KU ecosystem in a way that possibly wouldn't happen on any other platform yet. My paperbacks are on Amazon for the global print-on-demand infrastructure. A reader in Australia, Germany, or the US can order my paperback and it gets printed and shipped locally. I don't manage international fulfillment. I don't hold stocks in a warehouse, and there's no exclusivity requirement on physical books, which means I can sell paperbacks elsewhere too. I'm increasing my direct sales and TikTok shop presence for physical books, signed copies, bundles, the things Amazon can't offer. We've covered this in episode 6. The margins are better and I own the customer relationship. Every direct sale gives me the name and an email address that Amazon would never share. And the email list is the bridge between all those channels. A reader who discovers me through KU and signs up for my newsletter through the reader magnet in my back matter is no longer dependent on Amazon to find my next book. When the sequel comes out, I email them directly. Some will borrow it on KU, some might buy the ebook, some might buy a signed paperback from my direct store. The platform they use to read it almost doesn't matter once I have a way to reach them. And here's the bit that most KU authors won't tell you they're thinking about. Within the next year or so, I'm planning to release a new series exclusively on wide distribution and through my own store. Not pulling my existing books out of KU because I'm not going to disrupt something that's currently working, but testing with a new series from scratch to see whether wide distribution actually performs differently for my career when I give it a fair shot. I don't know what the results will be. That's the point. I want my own data rather than relying on somebody else's experience, because the authors swearing by KU are working from their data in their genre at their stage of their career, and the authors swearing by wide are doing exactly the same. Neither of them is me. The only way I know what works for my books in my genre with my audience for my career is to test it properly. Not by pulling everything out of KU in a panic, but by running a controlled experiment with a new series where I've got nothing to lose and everything to learn. This brings me to something I see constantly, and it needs saying. Most authors don't make the KU or wide decision based on their own data. They make it based on whoever was talking loudest when they were paying attention. Someone in a Facebook group says, "I switched to wide and doubled my income." 100 authors read that post, pull their books out of KU, and then they wonder why the same thing didn't happen for them. They didn't ask what genre that author writes in, how big their backlist is, or how large their email list is, or what platforms they've been building on before the switch. They just copied the outcome without understanding the inputs. Then 6 months later, a different author posts, "I went back to KU and my income recovered," and the pendulum swings the other way. I've watched this cycle happen at least 3 times in the groups I'm in. A big name author shares their wide success story. Everybody rushes to follow. Half of them see their income drop because they didn't have the audience or the backlist to make wide work at that stage. And then they blame the strategy instead of asking whether they were the right author for that strategy at that time. It's not that wide didn't work. It's what wide didn't work for them in their genre with their backlist at their stage of their career. But that nuance gets lost in nearly every Facebook post. Authors don't know what they don't know. And in the absence of their own data, they follow the crowd or the loudest guru at the time. That's not a strategy, it's a reaction. And it's how authors end up switching distribution modes every 6 months, never staying on one path long enough to actually see whether it works. The fix is the same as it always is. Get your own data. Make decisions based on what your books are actually doing in your genre with your audience. And stop treating somebody else's success story as your business plan. So when to stay in KU? KU makes the most sense when you're still building your name, as I said earlier. When you write in genres where KU readership is strong, that's romance, thriller, sci-fi, fantasy. And when the bulk of your income is currently coming from Amazon. Here's a practical test. Look at the top 100 in your subcategory on Amazon. How many have the KU badge? If the answer is most of them, KU readers are dominant in your genre and the audience is there. If the top 100 is mostly non-KU titles, that's a signal your genre might have a stronger purchase to owner readership. Look at your own numbers too. If you're getting meaningful page reads and they're driving real income, KU is doing its job for you right now. The question isn't whether KU is perfect, it's whether pulling your books out would give you more or less income and visibility at this point in your career. KU isn't a trap, it's a tool. Use it while you build the foundations to not depend on it forever. So when do you go wide? Wide makes the most sense when you have an established audience who will follow you to other platforms. When you write in genres where non-Amazon platforms have stronger readership, which includes the likes of literary fiction, non-fiction, and some romance subgenres. When you have a substantial backlist that can generate passive discovery across multiple platforms over time. And when the idea of being entirely dependent on one company generally keeps you up at night. If you go wide, you need to understand how the mechanics actually work, because it's not just unticking a box in KDP. Most indie authors going wide use an aggregator like Draft to Digital or Publish Drive. These services distribute your ebook to Kobo, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, and dozens of smaller retailers. You upload once, and they handle the formatting and distribution to each platform. Some authors prefer to go direct to each platform for better royalty rates and more control. But that means managing separate dashboards for Kobo, Writing Life, Apple Books, Connect, and all that. It's more work, but you keep a slightly larger share. The thing nobody warned you about with Wide is the silence at the beginning. When you pull a book out of KU or launch a new title Wide, your Amazon visibility takes a hit because you've lost the KU badge and the promotional tools that come with KDP Select. And the other platforms don't immediately fill the gap. Kobo and Apple Books don't have the same recommendation engine Amazon does. Your book lands on those platforms and it sits there. You have to actively build your presence on each one, which takes time and effort that most authors aren't prepared for. Wide is a long game. Authors who've been wide for 3 or 4 years often report that their non-Amazon income has grown steadily over time and now represents a meaningful percentage of their total. But also, all of them will also tell you the first year was rough. If you're not prepared to weather that dip, Wide will feel like a failure even when it's working exactly as it should. If that's you, Wide isn't a gamble, it's a diversification strategy. But go in with realistic expectations about the timeline and the effort required to make each platform work. So when do you do both? And for most authors, the real answer is some version of both. That's not a cop-out, it's what the situation actually calls for. I just told you exactly what my version of both looks like. Yours will be different because of your genre, your backlist, and your audience are all different. The hybrid approach lets you learn without gambling. If your KU series is earning steadily, you don't need to disrupt that to find out whether Wide works. Launch something new on Wide. Put the same effort into marketing it and compare the results. That gives you actual data, not somebody else's anecdote. And remember that KDP Select runs in 90-day periods. You're not locked in forever. If your data eventually tells you Wide is outperforming KU, let the current period expire and move those titles over. It's a rolling decision, not a lifetime commitment. The goal isn't to be a KU author or a Wide author. The goal is to be an author making informed decisions based on data rather than tribal loyalty. Wherever your books are right now, do this. Open a spreadsheet and write down where your income is actually coming from. What percentage is KU page reads? What percentage is ebook sales? What percentage is paperback? What percentage is direct? Look at the numbers rather than your feelings about the numbers. If you're in KU yourself, ask what your backup plan is if Amazon changes the terms tomorrow. Do you have an email list? Do you have a direct store? Anything that doesn't depend on Amazon's continued goodwill? If not, start building one. Not by leaving KU, just by adding another channel alongside it. If you're Wide, ask yourself whether you're actually investing in the non-Amazon platforms or just distributing there passively. Being Wide and doing nothing to build your presence on Kobo or Apple Books is just being invisible on 5 platforms instead of absent from 4. And if you've been thinking about testing the other side, consider doing it with a new series rather than pulling existing books. You keep what's working and you get clean data on the alternative. I know this episode doesn't give you the simple answer you wanted. You came here hoping I'd say do KU or go Wide, and you'd have the decision made. Anyone who gives you a blanket answer to this question is either selling you something or hasn't thought about it hard enough. The right answer depends on your genre, your career stage, your backlist, your audience, and your risk tolerance. The only person who can weigh all of that is you. What I can tell you is this. Use whatever platform serves you right now, but never stop building the thing that's yours. Make hay while the sun shines. Just make sure you're building a barn at the same time. So rule number 1 is write the damn book, and rule number 2, stay in the game. That's it for now. I'll see you next time. This is the Steve Kelly Truth Bombs podcast, published by Dark Wolf Publishing. No fluff, no filler, just the stuff that actually works.